It was supposed to be gold. In 2015, armed guards sealed off a forested hillside in southwestern Poland. Excavators stood ready. Government officials spoke carefully, but confidently. One deputy minister said he was 99% certain an armoured Nazi train had been found. The world leaned in. But when the digging stopped, the silence that followed became louder than any treasure announcement ever could have been. To understand why, the story has to go back to January 1945. Germany was collapsing. The Red Army was pushing west with overwhelming force. Cities in eastern territories were evacuating in panic. Officials destroyed documents, burned records, and scrambled to move anything of value away from the approaching front. Near Breslau, today known as Wrocław, witnesses later described a heavily guarded train moving toward the Owl Mountains region. It was unlike ordinary military transports, armoured cars, strict security, crates loaded under watch. Some accounts mentioned gold, others claimed artwork, jewels, foreign currency, valuables taken from occupied territories as the Reich retreated. Then the train disappeared. No confirmed arrival, no surviving documentation, no post-war recovery report, just absence. The Owl Mountains. For decades, most historians treated the so-called gold train as folklore, one more legend born from the chaos of a collapsing regime. But the location matters. The Owl Mountains were not empty wilderness. Between 1943 and 1945, Nazi engineers carved an enormous underground complex into those mountains under a program known as Project Ries. Ries, meaning giant. More than 8 kilometers of tunnels were blasted into rock. Massive chambers, reinforced corridors, infrastructure built in extreme secrecy. The labour force came largely from concentration camps. Thousands died. Construction was never completed. Some tunnels were abruptly sealed, others collapsed or flooded. Even today, parts of the complex remain inaccessible because they are too unstable to enter safely. A hidden train vanishing in precisely this region no longer sounds entirely impossible. A legend that refused to die. The legend persisted in local memory. Residents near Wałbrzych spoke of railway tracks that once led into hillsides and vanished. Older generations told stories of underground rumbling long after the war ended. In the 1970s, an elderly German reportedly confessed on his deathbed to helping seal a train inside a tunnel. He described explosives used to collapse the entrance. There was no way to verify his account. Still, the story refused to die. Because history had already proven something unsettling. Vast amounts of Nazi-looted wealth had indeed been hidden in unlikely places. Merkers. In April 1945, American troops entered a salt mine near Merkers in Germany. What they found shocked even hardened soldiers. Thousands of gold bars, millions in foreign currency, priceless artworks looted from across Europe, cultural treasures long believed destroyed. General Dwight D. Eisenhower personally visited the site to document the discovery. The Merkers find proved that enormous stockpiles of stolen wealth had been concealed underground as defeat approached. If one mine held billions, what else remained hidden? Other caches. Other caches surfaced in stranger places. In Austria's Lake Toplitz, divers in the 1950s recovered crates of forged British banknotes linked to Operation Bernhard, an attempt to destabilise the British economy through mass counterfeit currency. The lake's unusual, oxygen-deprived depths preserved what sank into it. Elsewhere, stolen art disappeared entirely. The most famous case remains the Amber Room, dismantled by German forces in 1941 and transported to Königsberg. After 1945, it vanished without confirmed trace. Destroyed, hidden, smuggled. No definitive answer has ever emerged. The 2015 discovery. These discoveries and mysteries share a pattern: systematic plunder, followed by deliberate concealment. Against that backdrop, the Polish gold train legend did not seem absurd. It seemed plausible. In August 2015, two men, Piotr Koper and Andreas Richter, formally notified Polish authorities that they had located a buried train near Wałbrzych. Their claim was based on ground-penetrating radar data showing a long, linear metallic object roughly 100 metres in length, buried several metres underground. The Deputy Culture Minister publicly stated he was nearly certain a train had been found. International media descended on the region. Hotels filled. Security fencing appeared. The Polish military guarded the site. The world waited for gold. Excavation. In late 2015, university experts conducted non-invasive scans and reported no evidence of a train at the indicated location. The anomalies, they said, were likely geological formations. Undeterred, Koper and Richter financed a full excavation in August 2016. Engineers, geologists, archaeologists, and safety experts joined the effort. For days, cameras documented heavy machinery cutting into earth. No train emerged. The excavation concluded without success. For many observers, that should have been the end. Why the legend persists. But legends often survive disappointment, especially when history shows they are not entirely baseless. The Owl Mountains still contain unexplored voids. Post-war maps reveal missing sidings and altered rail lines. Archival gaps remain, yet no verified armoured train filled with gold has ever been uncovered. And here, caution becomes essential. There is no confirmed evidence that a sealed train containing treasure, or anything else, was secretly discovered and suppressed after 2016. No official documentation supports claims of hidden chambers filled with personal effects. No credible investigation has demonstrated a government cover-up tied to the alleged gold train. What we actually know. What exists instead is a convergence of three realities. First, the Nazi regime systematically looted wealth on a massive scale. Second, it concealed assets underground as defeat approached. Third, post-war Europe contains countless incomplete records and sealed wartime constructions. From those facts, speculation grows. The appeal of the gold train is not simply about treasure, it is about unfinished history. Project Rees remains partially unexplored. The full intended purpose of its underground chambers is still debated. Possible command centres, weapons facilities, or relocation sites for leadership. The human cost of its construction is undeniable. Prisoners worked in lethal conditions. Many were never properly documented. When physical tunnels remain sealed, they invite narrative. When wartime records contain gaps, they invite suspicion. When treasure has been found before in improbable locations, the possibility of more lingers. Fact and folklore. What makes the gold train legend powerful is not proof. It is plausibility. A collapsing regime, looted wealth, secret tunnels, missing infrastructure, survivors' testimonies, verified discoveries elsewhere. Each element alone proves little. Together, they form a story that refuses to disappear. In recent years, archaeological surveys have continued across Lower Silesia. Most yield mundane results: geological anomalies, abandoned mining shafts, incomplete wartime construction. Yet researchers persist, not always for gold, but for documentation. Because beneath the treasure narrative lies something more significant: evidence. Evidence of forced labour networks, of wartime logistics, of concealed operations whose records were destroyed, even if no train. Filled with gold ever emerges, the tunnels themselves remain historical artefacts of immense importance. They testify to industrialised exploitation and secrecy. The psychological pull. There is also a psychological dimension. The idea of hidden Nazi gold captures public imagination because it feels unresolved. It suggests that history's ledger is incomplete, that stolen wealth, stolen art, and stolen lives remain buried. In some cases, that is true. Artwork continues to be recovered decades later. Families still search for heirlooms confiscated during occupation. Archives continue to declassify material. But not every mystery conceals a suppressed revelation. Sometimes, absence is simply absence. The real question. The gold train legend stands at the intersection of fact and folklore. Fact: massive looting occurred. Fact: underground complexes were built in the Owl Mountains. Fact: substantial caches were hidden elsewhere. Folklore: a specific armoured train vanished into a sealed tunnel and remains intact beneath Polish forests. Until physical evidence surfaces, the latter remains unproven. And yet, the persistence of the story reveals something important. War does not end neatly. Documents burn, records disappear, infrastructure collapses. Human suffering leaves gaps that can never be fully reconstructed. The Owl Mountains still contain sealed spaces carved by forced labourers who never lived to see liberation. Whether or not gold rests inside those mountains, history does. What remains buried there are not just rumours of treasure, but reminders of a regime built on exploitation and secrecy. The real question is not whether gold lies underground, it is whether the full historical record ever will. Because some secrets are myths, and some are simply waiting, beneath rock, beneath soil, beneath decades of silence, for patient, careful evidence to bring them into the light.